He didn't reject me because he hated me. He rejected me because he couldn't see a use for me. The moon choosing ritual is supposed to be the moment destiny is solidified, but as the silver light hit the ancient stones, my alpha didn't see a partner. He saw a liability. He stood before the entire pack and calmly declared that I had no gift, no lineage, and no power to offer his throne. To him, the mate bond was just a broken contract. The pack nodded. They looked at me with pity, as if I were a flickering candle about to be blown out by the wind. They expected me to walk away in shame, a powerless Omega lost in a world of predators. They didn't realize that my gift wasn't missing. It was just waiting for the weight of his arrogance to trigger it. The moment he turned his back on me, the world stopped obeying him. The ground didn't surge beneath his feet. It went silent. The air didn't carry his commands. It turned cold. He thought he was the source of the pack's strength. But as the shadows began to move at my command, he realized the terrifying truth. He didn't reject a weak link. He rejected the only person keeping the darkness at bay. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought they were better than you, stay with me. Because the powerless girl they discarded just woke up, and the alpha who walked away is about to find out that his kingdom is built on a foundation of dust. If you're drawn to rejected mate stories, hidden powers, and awakenings born from heartbreak, subscribe now. This story doesn't begin with strength, it begins with being left behind. She didn't stop running until the trees thinned and the river appeared ahead, dark water rushing beneath the moon. Her legs gave out at the bank, and she collapsed onto cold stone, breath tearing in and out of her chest. Her heart hurt, not sharply, but in a hollow, dragging way, as if something vital had been scooped out and forgotten. She pressed a hand to her chest, fingers curling into her cloak. "I wasn't nothing," she whispered to the river. Her wolf stirred faintly, curled tight and quiet. They never listened. Tears slipped down her cheeks, warm against cold skin. She bowed her head and pressed both palms to the stone, as if the earth itself might steady her. That was when the river slowed. Not froze, not vanished. Slowed, then stilled completely. Her breath hitched in panic, but the panic didn't echo back the way it should have. Instead, it softened, smoothed into something quieter. The air thickened, not with dominance, not with threat, but with awareness so deep it felt ancient. Moonlight bent toward her hands, silver threads winding around her fingers without heat or pain. Her breathing steadied, her heartbeat slowed, and something inside her opened, not violently, not suddenly, like a door unlocking after being ignored for far too long. Sensation flooded through her, not power surging outward, but connection spreading in every direction. She felt the river's depth and memory, the roots beneath the stone, the distant hills breathing under the moon. She felt boundaries not as walls, but as agreements, old, respected, and alive. Her wolf lifted its head, eyes wide with awe. "We are everywhere." "No," she breathed, trembling. "We're listening." The river resumed its flow gently, obedient not to command, but to release. She pulled her hands back, heart racing, not with fear, but with clarity so sharp it hurt. Whatever this was, it wasn't what the pack measured, and that terrified her more than being powerless ever had. She didn't go back. She turned north instead, following instinct rather than grief. The forest shifted subtly around her, branches parting, roots firming beneath her feet before she stumbled. When she stepped onto loose gravel, the ground steadied beneath her weight. "This isn't real," she whispered. The world did not argue. By dawn, exhaustion forced her to stop beneath a fallen oak. She curled into herself, shaking, finally breaking free as tears soaked into the earth. "I believed them," she whispered hoarsely. "I believed I was empty." Her wolf pressed close, no longer small. We were quiet. They mistook that for absence. She slept then, deeply, dreamlessly. She woke to awareness before sound. Footsteps, controlled, unhurried. An alpha presence brushed the edge of her senses, not flaring dominance, not probing, curious, contained. She rolled to her feet, knife already in hand. A man stood several paces away, tall and broad-shouldered, cloak dark against the pale forest. His aura felt old, not aggressive, but heavy, like stone that had learned patience. "You shouldn't be here," he said calmly. "Most wolves feel displaced this far north." "It doesn't bother me," she replied, surprised by her own steadiness. His eyes sharpened. "No, it doesn't." Recognition passed between them, not of rank, but of resonance. You were rejected, he said quietly. Yes, for being powerless. That's what they said. He studied her for a long moment, gaze flicking to the ground beneath her feet, to the way the forest leaned subtly toward her presence. They didn't know what to measure, he said finally. Her grip tightened on the knife. You do. I know what this land used to answer to, he replied, before dominance replaced balance. Her breath caught. What am I? He shook his head. That's the wrong question. He stepped back deliberately, increasing distance. There's an old basin 2 days north. Neutral ground, listening ground. Her pulse quickened. And you? I won't follow, he said, unless you ask. Choice again. She nodded once. Thank you. He turned and vanished into the trees without another word. She stood there long after, heart pounding, not with fear, with direction. She did not look back when she turned north. The pull to return, to explain, to plead, to prove, rose once, sharp and insistent, then faded as quickly as it came. Whatever had opened inside her by the river did not respond to desperation. It responded to stillness, to choice. The forest welcomed her with a quiet that felt deliberate, not empty, attentive. Her steps grew surer as she moved, the ground subtly adjusting beneath her weight. Branches bent aside before scraping her skin. When she veered off what might once have been a path, the trees thinned just enough to let her through. She tested it again, deliberately stepping onto a slick patch of moss. The stone beneath her foot firmed. Her breath caught. She stopped, heart hammering, not with fear but disbelief. This isn't normal, she whispered. The forest did not deny it. Her wolf stirred beside her, no longer curled inward. It padded at her side now, ears forward, gaze alert. The land hears us, it said. Wonder threaded through the thought. Yes, she replied softly, and I don't know why. That uncertainty followed her through the day. She moved until hunger gnawed at her ribs, then paused near a shallow ravine. Without searching, her gaze landed on a cluster of ripe berries tucked beneath a low bush. She ate slowly, testing for bitterness. None came. Later, when thirst burned her throat, she crested a rise and found a stream threading through stone, its water clear and cold. Each need met itself just before becoming desperation. Not luck. Response. By dusk, exhaustion settled into her bones, but it was clean exhaustion, earned, grounding. She built a small fire beneath a wind-sheltered overhang without fumbling, her hands steady in a way they had never been before. As she ate and warmed herself, the ache in her chest returned, not sharp, but deep. Memory crept in despite her resolve, the alpha's calm voice, the way the pack had watched, the silence that followed her words. Her jaw tightened. I wasn't weak, she said aloud. Her wolf pressed closer. You were unheard. The distinction settled something inside her. When she slept, dreams came, not of rejection, but of movement. Rivers shifting course, roots parting stone. The moon reflected in still water, no longer judging, only observing. She woke before dawn, alert and rested, as if sleep had been a pause rather than an end. That was when she felt it, a presence, not pursuit, not threat, observation. She rose slowly, senses extending without effort, and caught the faint brush of another alpha's awareness at the edge of her perception. It did not push. It did not test her boundaries. It waited. She stepped into the clearing without raising her knife. He stood several paces away, tall and broad-shouldered, cloak dark against the pale trunks. His dominance was folded inward, contained like a storm held behind stone. You're moving through old ground, he said calmly. Most wolves don't do well here. It hasn't pushed me away, she replied. No, he agreed. It hasn't. His gaze flicked briefly to her feet, to the way the leaves lay undisturbed around her. Recognition sharpened his expression. You were at the moon choosing, he said. Yes. You were rejected. The word still struck, but it no longer cut. Yes. For being powerless, he continued. That's what they said. Silence stretched between them, charged but steady. They mistook volume for strength, he said at last. It's a common error. Her breath caught. You know what this is. I know what it used to be called, he replied, before packs started rewarding dominance over balance. Her heart hammered. Tell me. He shook his head. Names shape expectations. You don't need that yet. He stepped back deliberately, giving her space. There's a place north of here, 2 days' travel, old stones, listening ground. Her pulse quickened. Listening to what? To what still holds when power goes quiet, he said. And you? She asked. I won't follow, he said. Unless you ask. Choice again. She studied him, felt the absence of pressure, the lack of claim. Whatever his interest, it wasn't ownership. "I'll go," she said. He nodded once, then turned and vanished into the trees without another word. She stood alone in the clearing long after he left, heart pounding, not with fear, with direction. When she resumed walking, the forest seemed to breathe with her. Somewhere far to the south, the alpha who had rejected her paced his territory, unsettled by a quiet he could not explain. His dominance flared and fell without echo, leaving him restless and sharp-edged. He did not know why certainty felt thinner. Only that something had shifted the moment she walked away, and the land remembered. The farther north she traveled, the more the forest changed, not in shape but in tone. It grew quieter without becoming empty, as if sound itself had learned restraint. Birds called less often but with intention. Wind slipped through the branches in deliberate currents, never gusting without reason. Even the scent of the land felt layered, each note distinct instead of muddled together. Her wolf moved with new confidence beside her, not prowling, not hiding. It walked as if it finally understood its place. "This land remembers," the wolf murmured. "Yes," she agreed, "and it's patient." By midday, fatigue brushed the edges of her awareness, but it did not overwhelm her. When she slowed, the ground offered level footing. When her focus drifted, the forest narrowed her path gently, nudging her forward without force. She realized then that what frightened her most wasn't the power. It was the absence of pressure. No command urging her to act, no expectation demanding obedience, no hierarchy dictating her place. For the first time, she was moving without being measured. That freedom was dizzying. She stopped beside a fallen log to drink, crouching to scoop water from a narrow stream. As she rose, her reflection caught her attention, eyes brighter, posture subtly different. Not stronger, more present. "I don't know what I'm becoming," she whispered. Her wolf tilted its head. "Neither do they." The thought brought a grim smile. By evening of the second day, the land shifted again. She felt it before she saw it, a deep hum beneath the soil, steady and resonant, like a heartbeat that did not belong to her. The trees thinned ahead, opening into a wide basin carved naturally into the earth. Standing stones rose from the ground in a rough circle, weathered and half sunk, their surfaces etched with symbols worn smooth by time. She stepped forward. The world inhaled. Her knees buckled as sensation surged through her, not pain, not force, but awareness so vast it stole her breath. She dropped to the stone, palms pressed flat, trembling as threads of connection wove through soil, water, root, wind, and blood. Not ownership, belonging. You don't command what you are part of. The truth settled into her bones without words. She stayed there through the night. Each time emotions spiked, fear, anger, longing, the clarity blurred. Only when she breathed through it, acknowledged it without clinging, did the warmth return. Balance demanded honesty. At dawn, she rose exhausted but steady. She was no longer lost. She did not expect others to come. They did anyway. The first arrived near midday, a healer, shoulders hunched with exhaustion, one leg dragging badly. He stopped at the basin's edge and hesitated. "I heard the land listens here," he said quietly. "I don't want power. I just want the screaming to stop." She nodded and gestured him forward. She didn't touch him. She didn't focus. She simply sat nearby, listening, with her body, with the land, with the quiet beneath his words. The basin warmed faintly. The healer gasped, eyes widening, not in pain but recognition. "I've been running from myself," he whispered. "Yes," she replied gently. "That hurts more than wounds." He left the next morning lighter, not healed, but grounded. Then came another and another. A former warrior whose hands shook when he slept, a mother who had silenced herself to survive her pack. Two young wolves fleeing a forced bond before it sealed. Each arrived wary, each left changed, not empowered, aware. Word spread carefully, never loudly, never with spectacle. Wolves learned not to arrive seeking miracles. Those who did felt nothing and left frustrated. The basin answered only honesty. That frightened the wrong people. The alpha felt it long before he understood it. Patrols returned unsettled. Rogue activity diminished without explanation. Border disputes stalled, not resolved but paused. Wolves were moving differently, listening, leaving packs without bloodshed. Something was interfering with dominance itself. He followed the disturbance north, anger sharpening his focus. The farther he went, the less his aura echoed. Power folded inward, compressed by a quiet resistance that refused to engage. When he reached the ridge overlooking the basin, he stopped. The land did not welcome him. It did not threaten him either. It held him outside. He descended anyway, jaw tight, pride forcing him forward until he crossed the basin's threshold. The pressure hit instantly, not pain, limitation. His dominance stalled, robbed of amplification. The ground beneath his feet felt dense, unyielding, not hostile but unresponsive. She stood at the center, calm and grounded. "You," he snarled, "you did this." She shook her head slowly. "I didn't. I stopped drowning it out." "You were nothing," he snapped. "I felt nothing from you." "You weren't listening," she replied evenly. The stones hummed faintly. For the first time in his life, the Alpha stood on ground that did not answer to him. And he realized, too late, that what he had rejected was never weakness at all. The Alpha did not attack. That realization unsettled him more than resistance ever could. Every instinct demanded he flare his dominance, force the land to recognize him the way it always had. Instead, the moment he tried, the basin answered with pressure. Not hostile, not violent, but immovable. His power folded inward, compressed until it felt heavy in his chest, like breath held too long. "What did you do to me?" he demanded, anger cutting sharp through the quiet. She did not raise her voice. "Nothing. You're feeling what everyone else has always felt around you." The words struck harder than claws. Around them, the standing stones hummed faintly, not in defense, not in threat, but in witness. Wolves lingered beyond the basin's edge, drawn by something they didn't understand, careful not to cross without invitation. "You're dangerous," the Alpha said at last. "Yes," she agreed calmly, "but not to you, only to lies." Silence stretched between them, brittle and charged. "You could have been my mate," he said abruptly. "You could have stood beside me." She felt the echo of the bond's wound flare, then settle. "I would have disappeared inside you," she replied. "That's not partnership." The land warmed slightly beneath her feet, not affirming her dominance, but her restraint. His jaw tightened. "You were nothing." She took a single step forward. The basin did not surge. It widened space instead, clear and unmistakable. "I was unheard," she said. "There's a difference." The Alpha's gaze flicked around the basin, at the quiet strength of the stones, the wolves watching without fear, the absence of hierarchy pressing down on him harder than any challenge. "What happens now?" he asked. "You leave," she said evenly, "and decide who you are without certainty." For a long moment he looked like he might argue. Then he turned away. The instant he crossed the basin's boundary, his dominance snapped back into place, but thinner, less assured. The land behind him exhaled. Her knees trembled only after he was gone. She lowered herself onto the stone, breath shaking, not from fear but release. Her wolf pressed close. "You didn't break him." "No," she whispered. "I let him see himself." The shift did not stop with him. Within days, the basin's influence rippled outward, not as force, but absence. Dominance displays weakened near its edges. Old patrol routes faltered without conflict. Wolves argued less violently, hesitated more often. Some returned to their packs uneasy. Others did not return at all. A young scout arrived at dusk, eyes shadowed. "My Alpha says this place is dangerous," he said quietly. She met his gaze. "Does it feel dangerous to you?" He hesitated. "No, it feels quiet. That's why it scares him," she said. The scout stayed until dawn. When he left, he did not pledge loyalty. He did not ask permission. He simply walked away steadier than he had arrived. Word spread faster after that, not of miracles, of limits. Those who tried to assert dominance inside the basin felt nothing. The warmth faded. The clarity dulled. The land withdrew without confrontation. Control had no leverage here. The response came from the east. Envoys arrived bearing seals from 3 neighboring packs, voices polished, postures rigid. They spoke of instability, of wolves leaving without bloodshed, of authority eroding. "This place must be governed," one said smoothly. "Registered. Claimed." The basin went cold, not violently, decisively. The envoy staggered, words losing weight mid-sentence. Wolves behind him shifted uneasily, instincts screaming contradiction. "You don't get to own listening," she said calmly. "It only works when it's voluntary." The envoys left angry. Patrols appeared beyond the ridge that night. Dominance pressed at the edges like claws scratching stone. Her wolf paced, tension flickering. "They'll try to destroy this." "Yes," she said, "because they can't control it." She gathered those who lingered near the basin, not followers, not defenders. I won't ask you to fight, she said quietly. This place isn't worth blood. A murmur of agreement rippled through them. But I won't ask you to leave either, she continued. Choice matters here. They stayed, not bravely, deliberately. The confrontation came at dusk. 3 alphas advanced to the tree line, dominance unfurling in practiced waves meant to overwhelm resistance without violence. Wolves gathered behind them, disciplined and ready. She walked forward alone, the basin warmed beneath her feet, not amplifying her presence, but anchoring it. You don't want war, she said evenly. We want order, one alpha snapped. Order without consent becomes tyranny, she replied. Dominance crashed against stillness and dispersed, not resisted, ignored. Confusion rippled through the alphas. They pushed harder. Nothing. One alpha faltered first, breath hitching as his presence lost traction. Another stepped back instinctively. The third lingered, pride warring with instinct, then retreated. No blood spilled, no victory declared. Only the unmistakable realization that force could not touch what refused to engage. That night, exhaustion settled deep into her bones. She sat alone at the basin's center, palms resting lightly on stone, feeling the strain finally ease. Her wolf lay beside her, calm and whole. We held without fighting. Yes, she whispered, that's the point. Somewhere far to the south, the alpha who had rejected her stared into the forest, certainty cracking under the weight of something he could no longer command. And the land remembered who listened. The night after the confrontation did not bring relief. It brought adjustment. The land around the basin did not relax into stillness. It recalibrated. The subtle hum beneath the soil deepened, steadier and more deliberate, like a body redistributing weight after learning how to stand correctly. Wolves lingering near the ridge felt it too. Conversations softened. Dominance displays thinned into something more cautious, more uncertain. She woke before dawn, senses alert, heart steady. This was the danger she had not fully considered. Not attack, expectation. When she rose and stepped into the basin's center, several wolves already waited at the edges. None crossed the stones, none bowed, but their eyes followed her with careful intensity. Her wolf stirred uneasily. They're starting to look to you. Yes, she murmured, and that can't continue. She walked the circle slowly, grounding herself, deliberately letting the basin not respond to her movement. When a young wolf finally spoke, his voice carried a fragile hope. What do we do now? She stopped and faced him. You listen, then you leave. Confusion rippled through the group. That's it? Another asked. That's everything, she replied. Disappointment flickered across a few faces. Relief crossed others. The basin warmed faintly, not in approval, but alignment. One by one, wolves entered, stayed briefly, and departed. Some left quietly, thoughtful. Others lingered at the edge, waiting for instruction that never came. By midday, word reached her through the land itself, pressure building beyond the ridge. Not immediate, coordinated. The packs were not done reacting. Far to the south, the alpha who had rejected her stood before his council, jaw tight. Reports lay scattered across the table. Rogue movement declining, border disputes stalling, wolves leaving, calmly. She's destabilizing us, an elder insisted. No, the alpha said slowly. She's exposing what was already unstable. The words surprised even him. Silence followed. She was unawakened, another voice pressed. You did what was right. The alpha did not answer. That night, he walked alone through his territory. The forest did not bristle under his presence the way it once had. His dominance still functioned, but it felt louder now, as if it had to shout to be noticed. She wasn't weak, he admitted aloud. The truth did not absolve him, but it lodged. The basin felt the approach before the scouts arrived. She stood at its center, palms pressed to stone, breathing slow and even. The land did not ask her to defend it. It asked her to remain honest. A coalition pack approached from the east, organized, disciplined, and deeply uncomfortable with what they could not name. Their alpha stepped forward alone, posture rigid, aura carefully restrained. You're causing fractures, he said without preamble. Wolves are questioning authority. Good, she replied evenly. His jaw tightened. Authority maintains order. No, she said, consent does. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. You think this place can exist without protection? It already does, she answered, because it doesn't compete. That makes it vulnerable. No, she said softly, that makes it inconvenient. He stepped closer. The basin cooled instantly. not in anger, in refusal. The alpha faltered, breath hitching as his presence lost weight. For the first time, fear crossed his face, not of her, but of irrelevance. "What are you?" he demanded. She met his gaze calmly. "Someone you can't threaten." The alpha stepped back, unsettled. They withdrew before nightfall. That evening, exhaustion pressed in hard. She sat at the basin's edge, watching the moon rise pale and distant. The hum beneath her skin felt quieter now, steadier, as if the land itself had settled into a new rhythm. Her wolf rested its head against her thigh. "You're holding too much." "Yes," she admitted, "and I won't always be able to." "Then you won't stay forever," it said. The thought brought unexpected relief. She did not want this place to depend on her. Dependence turned gifts into chains. By the next morning, she began to prepare for departure, not physically but internally. She tested the basin's response by stepping back, withdrawing her awareness. It held. She moved farther away. It held. The warmth remained, not tied to her presence, but to the honesty of those who entered. That was the moment she knew. Her role here was temporary. The basin was never meant to belong to anyone. It was meant to teach. She stood at the ridge at dawn, looking back once at the stones rising quietly from the earth. "Stay open," she whispered. The land did not answer. It didn't need to. She did not leave immediately. Understanding something was meant to be temporary did not mean abandoning it without care. For several days, she remained close enough to sense the basin without standing at its center, testing what happened when she withdrew her attention instead of anchoring it. The results surprised her. The land did not dim. The stones did not fall silent. The basin continued to respond, not to her presence, but to truth. Wolves arrived and departed as they always had, staying only as long as honesty could be sustained. Those who entered seeking refuge without reflection felt nothing and left unsettled. Those who came weary but willing settled into stillness, breath evening, shoulders lowering as if something heavy had been set down. The gift had never been hers to hold. She had only been the first to hear it again. That realization eased the last tension she had been carrying. The backlash did not disappear. It evolved. Packs that thrived on rigid hierarchy began tightening control, mistaking the unease spreading through their territories for rebellion. Discipline hardened into fear. Wolves left quietly at first, then in noticeable numbers. Other packs adjusted instead. Orders softened into discussions. Alphas listened where they once commanded. Not because they had learned gentleness, but because dominance no longer echoed the way it used to. Balance was changing the landscape without asking permission. The alpha who had rejected her felt the consequences intimately. Hunting parties returned slower, morale thinning. Warriors hesitated before acting, eyes flicking toward one another instead of lowering in obedience. His word still carried weight, but it no longer settled like law. One evening, a young lieutenant stood his ground after an order. "Why?" the alpha demanded. The lieutenant swallowed but did not look away. "Because it doesn't feel right." The alpha dismissed him sharply, but the exchange stayed lodged beneath his ribs. Later, alone, he pressed his palm to the stone wall of the hall, breathing slowly. She wasn't weak, he admitted again. The words no longer tasted bitter. They tasted accurate. At the basin, a different kind of tension emerged. A group of wolves lingered near the ridge, watchers, not participants. They did not cross the stones. They waited. Her wolf noticed first. "They're hoping you'll tell them what to do." "Yes," she replied, "and that's the danger." She stepped forward and addressed them plainly. "This place won't give you answers," she said. "It will only show you the ones you've been avoiding." A few looked disappointed. Some left immediately. Others hesitated, then entered, one by one, shoulders slumping as the basin stripped away pretense without mercy. She did not intervene. She watched. That night she dreamed of the moon not as an object, but as a rhythm, pull and release, presence and absence. Power was never static. It moved or it decayed. She woke with clarity. The next morning she crossed the basin deliberately and kept walking. Not in secrecy, not in ceremony. She simply moved beyond the stones, letting her awareness loosen its hold completely. The basin held. The hum beneath the land remained steady. She went farther. Still, it held. That was when relief washed through her, deep and grounding. She had not broken anything by stepping away. She had done exactly what was required. As she traveled, the world felt different beneath her feet. Not because she was stronger, because she was lighter. Where she passed, tension softened briefly. Arguments cooled before becoming violence. Wolves paused before asserting dominance. Choices widened where once there had been only obedience. She never stayed long enough to be named. She did not teach, she listened and moved on. Weeks later, the coalition packs attempted one final show of force. They marched, not toward the basin, but toward one another, dominance flaring, territory lines tested. The land responded not with resistance, but indifference. The expected surges of reinforcement never came. The confrontation dissolved without bloodshed. Confusion spread faster than fear. The Alpha stood on a rise overlooking his territory when word reached him. No battle, no victory, no submission, just failure to escalate. He exhaled slowly. The certainty he had built his rule upon was gone, not stolen, not destroyed, outgrown. For the first time, he wondered what kind of Alpha remained when fear no longer did the work for him. She paused on a distant ridge as dusk fell, looking back once toward where the basin lay hidden among trees and stone. It no longer felt like a place. It felt like a memory the land would not forget. Her wolf settled beside her. We did what we were meant to do. Yes, she whispered, and now we let it continue without us. She turned west as night fell, footsteps steady, breath even. The world did not call her back. It listened. Distance did not dull the change. If anything, it clarified it. As she moved farther from the basin, her senses no longer stretched outward to hold space. They settled inward instead, keen, grounded, precise. She no longer felt responsible for the land's balance, only aware of its responses. The difference was subtle but profound. This was what freedom felt like. She traveled through territories that once bristled with rigid hierarchy and felt the strain beneath the surface. Alphas asserted dominance more loudly now, as if volume could replace certainty. Omegas moved carefully, testing boundaries with small acts of hesitation rather than defiance. Listening had begun to infect the world. Some welcomed it, others panicked. In one border region, she encountered the aftermath of that panic. A pack had split, not violently, but decisively. Half had left under cover of night, abandoning dens, alliances, and history without a fight. The remaining wolves prowled their territory restlessly, uncertain whom they were meant to obey now that the old structure felt brittle. She did not intervene. She passed through unnoticed, sensing the way the land itself resisted escalation. Paths tangled where pursuit might have been easy. Scents muddled just enough to slow tempers. Conflict stalled before igniting. Not because the land favored peace, because it refused to amplify fear. Far to the south, the Alpha faced the quiet reckoning he had been postponing. It came not from challenge, but from absence. Wolves no longer brought him their grievances automatically. They solved small disputes themselves or let them go unresolved. His presence still commanded respect, but not reliance. One evening, an elder spoke carefully. They no longer look to you first. The Alpha stiffened. They obey. Yes, the elder said, but they don't center you. The words lodged painfully. That night, he walked alone through the territory he had once ruled with unquestioned authority. The forest no longer recoiled from him. It no longer surged beneath his steps. He remembered the basin, not its power, but its refusal. She wasn't weak, he said again. This time the admission did not ache, it clarified. She felt the shift from miles away. Not triumph, release. Her wolf lifted its head, ears flicking. Something settled. Yes, she murmured, and something else began. She did not turn back. She understood now that the gift she carried did not belong to places. It moved with awareness, not location. Where wolves learned to pause, to breathe, to choose, there it surfaced briefly, then moved on. It was not hers to direct, only to honor. In a mountain pass days later, she encountered another Alpha, not hostile, not curious. Tired, he stood aside as she approached, dominance folded inward in a way that spoke of restraint rather than weakness. I've heard of you, he said quietly. She shook her head. You've heard of a place. He considered that, then nodded. Maybe, but I feel something different here. That's because you're not trying to take it, she replied. They spoke briefly, not of power but of exhaustion, of the weight of leading wolves who no longer feared silence. When they parted, he bowed his head, not in submission, but acknowledgement. She continued on. By the time winter crept toward the edges of the world, stories spread that no longer named her. They spoke instead of moments. a patrol that turned back instead of attacking, an alpha who asked instead of commanded, a pack that chose separation without blood. No legends, no miracles, just restraint. At the basin, seasons passed, the stones weathered storms and snow alike unchanged. Wolves still arrived, alone, cautious, honest. They stayed briefly and left lighter, not because they had been healed, but because they had stopped pretending. The basin did not become famous. It became reliable. One night, standing beneath unfamiliar stars, she felt the moon rise without judgment, its pull gentle instead of demanding. Her wolf leaned into her presence. We were never meant to stay. No, she agreed. We were meant to move. They rested there until dawn, then continued west. The world did not follow her. It did not need to. It had learned how to listen without her standing in the middle of it. And somewhere far behind her, a former alpha stood before his pack and spoke, not with dominance, but honesty, for the first time. The land answered not with power, but with balance. The first real fracture happened in winter. Not at the basin, not where she walked, but inside a pack that had once prided itself on absolute unity. Snow lay heavy over their territory, muffling sound and slowing movement. Scarcity pressed in, tightening tempers that had already been stretched thin by months of uncertainty. The alpha called a council, dominance flaring instinctively as wolves gathered around the central fire. He spoke as he always had, firm, unquestioned, certain. And for the first time, the certainty failed to land. A murmur spread, not defiance, not rebellion, hesitation. One voice finally broke the silence. Why must it be done this way? The alpha froze. No challenge accompanied the question. No threat, just honest confusion. The question should have been crushed immediately. Instead, it hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Because the land did not reinforce him, because fear no longer filled the gap where trust should have been. That pack did not fall apart that night. It changed, slowly, painfully, without spectacle. And far away, she felt the ripple pass through the world like a low tide pulling back. She had reached the western highlands by then, where the land rose sharp and unforgiving, and wolves learned early the cost of arrogance. Here, dominance had always been quieter, more practical. Even so, the shift was evident. Arguments ended before claws emerged. Disputes paused instead of escalating. Alphas listened longer before speaking. Not all of them liked it. One night, she sensed a familiar presence approaching. Not hostile, not searching. Resigned. She turned before he stepped into the firelight. The alpha, who had rejected her, stood a short distance away, cloak dusted with snow, posture stripped of ceremony. His dominance was still there, but it no longer tried to lead. I followed the quiet, he said simply. She did not invite him closer. You found it, she replied. Yes, he said, and I finally understood what you were. Silence stretched between them, layered with everything that had once bound them. I was wrong, he said at last. Not because you became something powerful, but because I never learned how to hear what already was. She felt the old wounds stir, then settle. That realization doesn't belong to me anymore, she said gently. He nodded. I know. He did not ask forgiveness. He did not ask her to return. I changed how I lead, he continued. Not enough to undo the harm, enough to stop repeating it. That's all anyone can do, she said. They stood together beneath the cold stars, no bond tugging between them, no destiny tightening the air, just choice. When he turned to leave, the world did not resist him, and when she walked away in the opposite direction, it did not follow. News reached her later through the land itself. Packs were no longer measuring strength the same way. Some collapsed under the change, unable to survive without fear to prop them up. Others restructured slowly, painfully, choosing consent over command, one decision at a time. The basin remained steady through it all. Wolves still arrived alone, still stayed briefly, still left changed, not empowered, aligned. She came to understand then that what had awakened inside her was never meant to fix the world. It was meant to interrupt it, to remind it that power without listening decays, that dominance without consent rots from the inside, that silence once respected cannot be forced back into obedience. Her gift was not influence, it was pause. And pause, once introduced, reshapes everything that follows. Spring came late that year. Snow melted from the highlands, revealing new growth where old paths had eroded. She moved through it without leaving marks that lasted, passing like a breath through the world. Her wolf remained steady, no longer searching for purpose. "We're done changing things," it observed one evening. "Yes," she replied. "Now we let them change themselves." She did not know where she was going next. For the first time, that uncertainty felt like freedom. Behind her, the world continued to adjust, not toward peace, not toward chaos, toward awareness. And awareness does not retreat once it has been named. She did not realize how far she had gone until the land stopped recognizing her. Not with hostility, with neutrality. The hills flattened into open plains where wind carried scent for miles and nothing hid behind roots or stone. Wolves lived differently here, looser, less bound to bloodlines or ancient laws. Packs formed and dissolved with the seasons. Leadership shifted based on need rather than lineage. It should have felt unfamiliar. Instead, it felt honest. She slowed her pace, allowing the wind to strip away the last lingering echoes of responsibility she had carried too long. The hum beneath the world was quieter here, not absent, but less concentrated. Listening existed in fragments, moments instead of places. That was as it should be. Her wolf lifted its head, ears flicking as a group of scouts appeared ahead. They did not flare dominance. They did not circle. They simply waited. "You're passing through," their leader observed. "Yes," she replied. The leader studied her carefully, gaze sharp but unthreatening. "You're not carrying trouble." "No," she said, "only choice." After a moment, the leader nodded and gestured the group aside. No demand, no permission sought. She passed without resistance. That night, beneath a wide, open sky, she built a small fire and sat watching sparks rise into darkness. The moon hung low and distant, no longer a force shaping fate, just a witness to motion it could not command. Her wolf settled beside her. "Do you feel it ending?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Does that frighten you?" She considered the question carefully. "No," she answered. "It feels complete." Completion did not arrive with triumph. It arrived with stillness. Far behind her, the basin remained, not guarded, not revered, not claimed. Wolves still found it, not because they were told, but because something inside them quieted long enough to notice its pull. They arrived alone. They left alone. Some returned to rebuild what they had broken. Some walked away from packs that could not change. Some simply learned how to sit with themselves without flinching. No stories exaggerated the place. No songs were written. It did not become legend. It became reference. The alpha who had once rejected her stood before his pack at the turn of the season. His voice no longer filled the space automatically. Wolves listened because they chose to. "I won't lead you by fear anymore," he said. "If that means some of you leave, I will not stop you." No one spoke at first. Then one wolf nodded, then another. Not agreement. Consent. The land did not surge beneath his feet, but it did not resist him either. She never returned to the basin. She never needed to. What had awakened the night he walked away no longer required a place to exist. It lived now in pauses before commands, in breaths taken before violence, in questions asked instead of orders given. It lived wherever power learned restraint. As dawn broke over the plains, she stood and extinguished her fire with care, watching steam rise and vanish into morning air. There was nothing left to tend, no role to fulfill. No balance to maintain, only movement. Her wolf stretched, calm and complete. "We were never powerless." She smiled faintly. "We were just early." They turned toward the horizon together, footsteps steady, leaving no trail the land needed to remember, because the world had already learned what it needed from her absence. He rejected her for being powerless, never realizing the moment he walked away was the moment her gift awakened, and the world stopped obeying him forever.